My husband filed for divorce and laughed in my face until the judge revealed my net worth and he screamed. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. I am Sarah, 29 years old, and right now, I am sitting in a courtroom in Nashville, watching my husband of 6 years laugh. It isn't a nervous laugh, or a sad laugh. It is a laugh of pure, unadulterated arrogance. Preston is signing our divorce papers with a flourish, the expensive fountain pen scratching against the document like a claw. He looks like he just won the lottery, but in reality, he thinks he is discarding a piece of trash. Preston always thought I was just a naive girl from the sticks, a pretty face with no real ambition beyond keeping his house clean and his bed warm. Little did he know that while he was busy cheating on me with his blonde intern, Shelby, I was building an empire right under his nose. Judge Holloway is shuffling the papers on her high bench. She is a stern woman with silver hair and eyes that don't miss a thing. She is holding a sealed envelope in her hand, my financial statement. I can feel my heart hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from anticipation. I have been waiting for this moment for months. I can't wait to see that smug smile wiped off Preston's face permanently. But before I tell you how my soon-to-be ex-husband's expression completely shattered, let me welcome you here. I am so glad you joined me. If you are watching this, maybe you have felt underestimated too. Maybe you have had someone look down on you and treat you like you were invisible. I know that feeling. It burns. I looked over at the gallery. Shelby was sitting there, chewing gum and scrolling on her phone, looking bored. She was 24, wearing a dress that was a little too short for court, and she had this air of entitlement that matched Preston's perfectly. She thought she was upgrading. She thought she was winning the prize. Preston capped his pen and slid the papers across the mahogany table toward his lawyer, David. David was a shark, the kind of divorce attorney who charged $500 an hour just to breathe in his direction. He gave Preston a confident nod. They thought this was over. They thought they had crushed me. You see, the narrative they had spun was that I was a leech. A gold digger who had contributed nothing to the marriage and deserved nothing from the estate. Preston had offered me a pittance, a small settlement that wouldn't even cover a year's rent in the city, and told me I should be grateful. Preston leaned over toward me. The smell of his expensive cologne, the same scent that used to make me feel safe, now just made my stomach turn. He lowered his voice so the judge wouldn't hear. I hope you kept your old white-dressing apron, Meredith, he whispered, his eyes glinting with malice. You're going to need it when you go back to that pig trough in Kentucky. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just looked him dead in the eye and smiled. It was a small, cold smile. I wouldn't worry about me, Preston, I said softly. You should worry about your blood pressure. He frowned, confused by my lack of hysteria. He expected me to beg. He expected the weeping woman he had bullied for the last 6 years. But that woman was gone. Order, Judge Holloway said, her voice cutting through the tension. We have the signed separation agreement regarding the marital assets declared by Mr. Shannon. Now, we must address the financial disclosures submitted by Mrs. Shannon this morning. Preston rolled his eyes. Your Honor, is this necessary? My wife hasn't worked in years. Unless she's declaring her collection of knitting needles, I don't see how this is relevant to the settlement. His lawyer, David, chuckled. Shelby giggled from the back row. Judge Holloway didn't smile. She looked at Preston over the rim of her glasses. Mr. Shannon, in my courtroom, we follow procedure. And I must say, after reviewing this document in my chambers. She paused, looking down at the paper again, a strange expression crossing her face. It looked like shock. I believe this is highly relevant. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed in the background. I folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. This was it. The moment of truth. For the record, the judge continued, I will read the summary of Mrs. Shannon's separate assets, acquired through independent business ventures and investments during the marriage. Preston looked bored. He checked his watch. He probably had a lunch reservation to celebrate his freedom. Judge Holloway cleared her throat. Asset number 1, majority ownership in Meredith Finance Solutions, LLC. Valuation. She paused for effect. $2.1 million. Preston's head snapped up so fast I heard his neck crack. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Excuse me, his lawyer stammered. I'm not finished, Judge Holloway said, her voice steel. Asset number 2, investment portfolio, including early-stage equity in fintech ventures. Current market value, $12.5 million. Thank you for being here with me. If you want to know how a girl from Kentucky pulled this off while living with a controlling monster, let me take you back to where it all started. Before the millions, before the betrayal, and before I learned that revenge is a dish best served with a certified bank statement. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from, I'd love to know who is in my corner today. I wasn't born into silk sheets and silver spoons. I was a small-town girl from Kentucky, raised by a single mother who worked as a bank teller for 30 years. My father died when I was 4, leaving us with nothing but a mountain of medical bills and a leaky roof. My mother was my hero. She taught me the value of $1 before I could even read. While other kids were playing with dolls, I was helping her balance her checkbook at the kitchen table. Meredith, she would say, her hands rough from work, money is freedom. Never let a man hold the purse strings, or he holds your life. I wish I had listened to her sooner. I was good with numbers. They made sense to me in a way people didn't. I studied hard, worked nights at a diner, and earned a full academic scholarship to Vanderbilt University in Nashville to study accounting. I had big dreams. I wanted to work in corporate finance, maybe even run my own firm one day. I wanted to buy my mom a house where the roof didn't leak when it rained. I met Preston in the university library during my senior year. I was buried under a pile of tax law textbooks, wearing a baggy sweatshirt and no makeup. He approached my table, looking like he had just stepped out of a catalog for wealthy Southern gentlemen. He was a third-year law student, handsome, charming, and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about an overdraft fee a single day in your life. You look like you're trying to solve the national debt crisis, he joked, flashing a perfect white smile. I blushed. Just intermediate accounting, I mumbled. You have potential, were his first real words to me. He looked at my books, then at me, analyzing me like I was a fixer-upper property. You just need the right guidance. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. I was young, impressionable, and dazzled by his attention. Preston came from old money. His family, the Shannons, had been prominent attorneys in Nashville for generations. He swept me off my feet with dinners at restaurants I couldn't pronounce and weekend trips to the Smoky Mountains. But even in the beginning, there were red flags I chose to ignore. He constantly improved me. He criticized my Target clothes, suggesting I burn them. He told me my accent was too rural and corrected my grammar in front of his friends. I'm just trying to help you fit in, Meredith, he would say when I looked hurt. You want to be part of my world, don't you? I did. I wanted to be worthy of him. I mistook his control for care. When I graduated, I had offers from 2 major accounting firms. I was ecstatic. I remember running to his apartment to tell him the news, waving the offer letters in the air. Preston. I got the job at Deloitte. I squealed. He didn't hug me. He just took the letter, glanced at the salary, and tossed it on the coffee table. It's a cute salary, Meredith, he said dismissively. But let's be realistic. The hours are long. And honestly, my wife doesn't need to work. My wife. He hadn't proposed yet, but the promise was there. But I want to work, I argued weakly. I worked so hard for this degree. He pulled me into his lap, stroking my hair like I was a pet. Baby, listen. My family, we have expectations. I need a wife who can manage the social calendar, the household, the charity events. That is a full-time job. Why exhaust yourself for pennies when I can give you the world? He proposed 2 months later with a diamond ring that cost more than my mother's life savings. It was stunning. It was heavy. And as he slid it onto my finger, I felt a strange sensation, not just joy, but the click of a lock snapping shut. I turned down the job offers. I convinced myself I was lucky. I was marrying a prince. I didn't realize then that a castle is just a prison if you don't have the key to the front door. I called my mom to tell her. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Are you sure, Mary? She asked, her voice tight. You have such a brilliant mind. It seems a shame to waste it planning dinner parties. I'm not wasting it, Mom, I said, defensive. I'm building a family. Preston takes care of me. Just make sure you keep a little something for yourself, she warned. Just in case. I didn't listen. I dove headfirst into his world, leaving the ambitious girl from Kentucky behind. Or so I thought. We got married in a lavish ceremony that felt more like a corporate merger than a celebration of love. Preston's mother, Eleanor, planned every detail. She didn't let me choose the flowers, the music, or even the flavor of the cake. Oh, honey, she had said, patting my cheek with her cold, manicured hand. You don't know what people in our circle expect. Leave it to the professionals. After the honeymoon in St. Bart's, we moved into a sprawling estate in Belmead, the most exclusive neighborhood in Nashville. It was a beautiful house, filled with antiques and expensive art. But it was cold. It felt like a museum where I was the newest exhibit, not the lady of the house. Eleanor visited unannounced almost every day. She would run a finger along the mantelpiece checking for dust, criticize my flower arrangements, and make subtle digs about my background. I see you're serving meatloaf, she sniffed one evening during dinner. How rustic. Preston is used to more refined palates, dear. I looked at Preston, hoping he would defend me. He just cut his meat and shrugged. Mom's right, Meredith. Maybe take a cooking class? You have plenty of free time. That was the theme of my life, free time. But it wasn't free. It was empty. I tried to make friends with the other wives in the neighborhood. They were all beautiful, well-groomed, and terrifying. They spent their days at the country club, shopping for things they didn't need, and gossiping. They were polite to my face, but I could feel their judgment. To them, I was the charity case, the poor girl Preston had picked up. At a cocktail party about 6 months into our marriage, I overheard 2 women talking in the powder room. I was in a stall, and they didn't know I was there. I give it 2 years, one voice said. She's sweet, but she's so simple. Did you see that dress? It's clearly off the rack. Preston always liked projects, the other woman laughed. He'll get bored once he realizes you can't breed the hillbilly out of her. I sat in that bathroom stall, tears streaming down my face, clutching my knees to my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run out there and tell them that I had graduated magna cum laude, that I understood complex tax codes better than their husbands understood their own children. But I didn't. I fixed my makeup, put on a fake smile, and went back out to stand by Preston's side. When I told him about it later, seeking comfort, he sighed. You're being sensitive, Meredith. They're just intimidating because they have class. Watch them. Learn from them. Stop acting like a victim. That was the moment I started to feel lonely in my own marriage. The control tightened slowly. Preston insisted on managing all the finances. He gave me a credit card for household expenses, but he scrutinized every charge. "Why is the grocery bill $200 this week?" he asked one night, reviewing the statement with a highlighter in his hand. "Prices have gone up, Preston." "And I bought the organic steaks you like," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to be efficient," he lectured, tapping the paper. "Just because we have money doesn't mean we burn it. I expect you to be more careful." Meanwhile, he came home with a new set of golf clubs worth $3,000 the very next day. When I pointed out the hypocrisy, he laughed. "That's networking, Meredith. My golf game brings in clients. Your grocery shopping brings in calories. Know the difference?" I felt small. I felt stupid. I had become exactly what my mother feared, a woman with no voice because she had no money of her own. The house in Belmead wasn't a home, it was a gilded cage, and I was the bird that had forgotten how to fly. But birds remember. Deep down, under the layers of insecurity and fear, the girl who loved numbers was still there. She was just sleeping. And she was about to wake up. 2 years into the marriage, the silence in the big house became deafening. I wanted a baby. I thought maybe a child would fill the empty rooms and bring Preston and me closer together. Maybe if I were the mother of his heir, I would finally earn his respect and the respect of his family. One evening, after a particularly stiff dinner where he spent the entire time checking his emails, I brought it up. "Preston," I started, nervously twisting my napkin. "I was thinking, maybe it's time we started a family." He didn't look up from his phone. "Not now, Meredith. I'm busy." "There's never a good time," I pushed, feeling a surge of courage. "We've been married 2 years. I'm lonely here." "And you?" "Lonely?" He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "I give you a mansion, a Mercedes, and a life most women would kill for, and you're lonely? Get a dog." "I don't want a dog, I want a child." I raised my voice, surprising both of us. Preston set his phone down slowly. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Children are a massive responsibility," he said, using his lawyer voice, calm, condescending, dangerous. "And they are expensive. Private schools, trust funds, nannies. We are not there yet financially." I stared at him. "Not there? Preston, you made partner last year. Your family has generational wealth. We are more than fine." "My money is fine," he corrected me. "My family's money is fine. But we? You contribute nothing, Meredith." "Zero." The words hit me like a slap. "I run this house," I stammered. "I manage everything." "You spend money," he interrupted. "You don't make it. If we have a child, who is going to pay for their future?" "Me. It's all on me. You haven't established yourself. What kind of role model would you be? A mother who lives off an allowance? Then let me work." I cried. "I'll go back to accounting. I can get a job." He laughed. A short, cruel bark. "Who would hire you now? You have a 2-year gap on your resume. You're rusty. You're a housewife, Meredith. Accept it." He stood up, signaling the conversation was over. "When you can bring something to the table besides a casserole, we can talk about children. Until then, stop nagging me." He walked out, leaving me alone in the dining room with the expensive china and the silence. That night was the breaking point. But the final nail in the coffin came 3 days later. I was at a bookstore, trying to find some comfort. I wandered into the professional development section and saw a new book on advanced tax strategies and forensic accounting. My heart leaped. I missed this stuff. I missed the logic of numbers. Without thinking, I bought it, along with a few other business books. The total was about $150. That evening, Preston stormed into the bedroom, holding his phone. He had received a transaction alert. "What is this?" he demanded, shoving the phone in my face. $150 at Barnes & Noble? Did you buy the whole store? I bought some books, I said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Books? What kind of books? I showed him the stack on the nightstand. He picked up the forensic accounting guide and looked at it like it was written in alien hieroglyphs. Forensic accounting? He scoffed. Why? Are you planning to audit the gardener? I want to learn, Preston. I want to keep my mind sharp. It's a waste of money, he said, tossing the book onto the floor. It landed with a heavy thud that echoed in my chest. You're never going to use this. It's just a hobby to make you feel smart. Next time, ask me before you waste my earnings on your little fantasies. He turned off the light and went to sleep. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I listened to his steady breathing. He slept like a baby, unburdened by conscience. I looked down at the book on the floor. He had thrown away my ambition like it was garbage. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was helpless. He thought he owned me because he paid the bills. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, resolute click. The lock on the cage didn't open, but I realized I had the tools to pick it. You want me to bring something to the table? I thought, my eyes dry and burning. Fine. I'll buy the whole damn table. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited until Preston left for work the next morning. Then, I drove to a different bank across town, a bank where the Shannons had no connections, and I opened a separate account in my name. I put in $500, birthday money from my mom that I had hidden in a shoebox. It wasn't much. But it was mine. And it was the seed of his destruction. The rebellion started in the shadows. I knew I had to be careful. Preston was controlling, but he was also arrogant. He never believed I was capable of deception because he didn't respect my intelligence. That was his weakness, and my greatest advantage. I needed a workspace, but I couldn't use the study, that was Preston's domain. I couldn't use the dining room table, he would see my papers. So, I looked at the guest bedroom walk-in closet. It was huge, filled with winter coats and old linens we rarely used. It was perfect. I cleared a space in the back, behind a rack of heavy wool coats. I set up a folding card table and a cheap lamp. I bought a used laptop with cash I'd siphoned from the grocery budget over 2 months, buying generic brands but charging Preston for premium, pocketing the difference. It was petty, maybe, but it was necessary survival. I told Preston I was spending my days reorganizing the house and volunteering at a library. In reality, the moment his BMW pulled out of the driveway, I was in that closet. I started by refreshing my knowledge. The accounting world changes fast, and I had been out of the game for 2 years. I devoured online courses, listened to financial podcasts while I cooked, and read every regulation update I could find. I realized I didn't just want a job, I wanted a business. I wanted independence that couldn't be fired or laid off. I decided to start a boutique financial consulting firm for small businesses. I knew there was a gap in the market. Big firms like Deloitte charged too much for small bakeries or local contractors, and H&R Block didn't offer strategic planning. I could be the middle ground. But I needed a legal entity. If I used my name, Meredith Shannon, Preston might find out, or worse, if we ever divorced, he could claim it was marital property because I used his support to start it. I did my research. I used the private browsing mode on my new laptop, terrified he would check the history. I learned about piercing the corporate veil and separate property laws in Tennessee. I registered an LLC called Bluegrass Solutions, a nod to my Kentucky roots. I used my mother's address in Kentucky for the registration paperwork so nothing would come to the house in Belmead. I used her maiden name on the non-legal correspondence. I built a simple website myself. It wasn't flashy, but it was professional. I listed my services: tax preparation, cash flow analysis, profit maximization. Now, I just needed clients. This was the hardest part. I couldn't network at the country club. I couldn't ask Preston's friends. I was invisible in my own world. I spent weeks cold calling businesses from the closet, whispering into the phone so the housekeeper wouldn't hear me. Hello, my name is Meredith. I'm a financial consultant. Click. I can help you save on taxes. Click. It was discouraging. Rejection after rejection. I sat in that dark closet, surrounded by mothballs and old coats, wondering if Preston was right. Maybe I was deluding myself. Maybe I was just a housewife playing pretend. One afternoon, Preston came home early. I scrambled to hide the laptop under a pile of towels just as he opened the closet door. Meredith? What are you doing in here? He asked, looming over me. My heart stopped. I was sitting on the floor, holding a stack of linens. I was just sorting the winter bedding, I lied, forcing a smile. Getting ready for the season. He looked around, sniffing the air. The laptop was humming slightly under the towels. It smells musty in here, he wrinkled his nose. And why are you sweating? It's just warm work, Preston. He shook his head, looking at me with that familiar mix of pity and annoyance. You find the strangest ways to fill your day. Dinner at 7. Don't be late. He closed the door. I let out a breath I had been holding for a minute. My hands were shaking. That was too close. But the fear didn't stop me. It fueled me. Every time he dismissed me, every time he looked at me like I was furniture, I went back to that closet and worked harder. I wasn't just organizing linens. I was organizing my escape. My breakthrough didn't come from a cold call. It came from a cupcake. I often went to a small, chaotic bakery called Sweet Surrender on the edge of town to work on my laptop where no one knew me. The owner, Brenda, was a fiery woman in her 50s with flour constantly on her apron and a stress line permanently etched between her brows. One rainy Tuesday, I was sipping my coffee when I saw Brenda sitting at the corner table, head in her hands, sobbing. A pile of terrifying-looking letters from the IRS was spread out in front of her. I hesitated. The old Meredith, the shy housewife, would have looked away. But the new Meredith, the CEO of Bluegrass Solutions, stood up. I walked over. Is everything okay? Brenda looked up, her eyes red. It's a disaster, honey. A complete disaster. The IRS says I owe $20,000 in back taxes and penalties. I don't have that kind of money. They're going to shut me down. This bakery is my life. I looked at the papers. I couldn't help myself. May I? She nodded, too defeated to care. I scanned the documents. My brain clicked into gear. I saw the problem immediately. Her previous accountant had misclassified her inventory and missed a crucial deduction for equipment depreciation that had been introduced in the last tax bill. Brenda, I said, pointing to line 45. This is wrong. They calculated your liability based on gross revenue, not net profit after the new Section 179 deduction. And look here, they flagged a payroll error that isn't actually an error, it's just a filing mismatch. She blinked at me. What does that mean? It means you don't owe $20,000, I said, pulling a pen from my purse. I did some quick mental math. You owe maybe $2,000. In fact, if we amend the last 3 years, they might actually owe you a refund. Her jaw dropped. Are you serious? Who are you? I'm Meredith, I said, extending my hand. And I'm a financial consultant. I spent the next 3 days fixing Brenda's books. I worked on her sticky countertops after hours, fueled by stale donuts and adrenaline. I drafted the response letters to the IRS, reorganized her payroll system, and set up a cash flow plan. 2 months later, the letter came. The IRS accepted the correction. Brenda owed nothing. Actually, she got a refund of $1,500. When she got the news, she hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Then, she pulled out her checkbook. "How much do I owe you, Meredith?" "Whatever it is, it's not enough." I froze. I hadn't thought about the fee. I was just happy to do it. "Oh, I don't know." "Business is business," Brenda said sternly. "You saved me 20 grand. Value your time, or no one else will." She wrote a check for $2,000. I held that check in my hands. It was the first money I had earned in 3 years. It wasn't an allowance. It wasn't a gift. I had earned it with my brain. I stared at it until the numbers blurred through my tears. Brenda watched me. She was smart. She had seen the expensive ring on my finger and the sad look in my eyes. She guessed the situation. "You're hiding this, aren't you?" she asked softly. I nodded, wiping my eyes. "My husband, he doesn't think I can do this." Brenda leaned in, her voice low and fierce. "Listen to me. You are a wizard with numbers, kid. Don't let some man with an ego the size of Texas dim your light. You keep this money. You reinvest it. You build something that is yours. Because at the end of the day, the only person who will always have your back is you." Brenda became more than my client. She became my mentor. She introduced me to her suppliers, her friends who owned flower shops and catering companies. They were all small business owners, mostly women, who were tired of being mansplained to by expensive accountants in suits. They loved me. I listened to them. I explained things simply. And I got results. Bluegrass Solutions began to grow. I opened a business bank account, digital only, no paper statements sent to the house. I deposited that first $2,000. It was a small start. But Brenda was right. I wasn't just a housewife anymore. I was a professional. And Preston had no idea that the little woman waiting at home was starting to out-earn him, one cupcake at a time. Money sitting in a savings account is safe, but it's lazy. That's what Brenda told me, and that's what I knew from my finance degree. Inflation eats savings. To get real freedom, the kind that would let me leave Preston and his Belmead mansion, I needed my money to work. 6 months after meeting Brenda, my client list had grown to 15 local businesses. I was making about $4,000 a month. I hit it all. I paid for my own gas with cash, I bought my own clothes at thrift stores and told Preston they were old, and I let him continue to pay the household bills to maintain the illusion of dependency. Then, the opportunity of a lifetime dropped into my lap. One of my new clients was a woman named Patricia, a serial entrepreneur who was launching a fintech startup. She was brilliant, but chaotic. I was helping her structure her cap table for a seed funding round. The company, Ledger AI, was developing an artificial intelligence tool to automate bookkeeping for small businesses, exactly the kind of work I was doing manually. I saw the prototype. It was rough, but the algorithm was genius. It could do in seconds what took me hours. Patricia was meeting with angel investors, mostly men in suits who looked a lot like Preston. They were skeptical. They didn't think small business owners would trust AI. I sat in on one of these meetings as her bookkeeper. I served coffee and kept my mouth shut, listening to these men dismiss her. "It's too niche," one guy said, leaning back in his chair. "Small businesses don't have the budget for SaaS subscriptions." I knew he was wrong. I knew Brenda would pay for this in a heartbeat if it saved her from IRS headaches. That night, Preston came home complaining about his day. Some idiot pitched a tech startup to the firm today, he laughed, pouring himself a whiskey. Everyone thinks they have the next Facebook. Most of these things go to zero. I told the partners we should stick to real estate and oil. Tech is a bubble. I looked at him. His arrogance was my market indicator. If Preston thought it was a bad idea, it was probably a gold mine. He lacked imagination. He feared change. The next day, I met Patricia. I want to invest, I said. She looked surprised. Meredith, the minimum ticket size for this round is $25,000. I know you do well consulting, but I had $28,000 in my secret account. It was everything I had earned, plus every penny I had scrimped and saved. If I lost it, I was back to zero. I was back to being trapped. My palms were sweating. I thought of my mom's leaky roof. I thought of Preston throwing my book on the floor. I'm in, I said, my voice shaking slightly. But I need you to structure it through my LLC, and I need a strict NDA. My husband can't know. Patricia looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled. Silent partner. I like it. I transferred the money. My bank balance went down to $300. I stared at the screen, terrified. I had just bet my freedom on a piece of code. For the next year, I worked like a dog. I took on more clients to rebuild my safety net. I worked late into the night in the closet. I told Preston I had insomnia and was reading in the guest room so I wouldn't disturb him. He didn't care, he was happy to have the bed to himself. And then, Ledger AI took off. They got into a prestigious accelerator program. Then a major bank signed a partnership deal. The valuation of the company tripled, then quadrupled. Preston remained oblivious. He was too busy buying new cars and planning his annual golf trip to notice that his wife was reading TechCrunch articles with a magnifying glass. One evening, we were at a dinner party at the country club. A man named Charles, a wealthy investor, was talking about the tech boom in Nashville. There's this new company, Ledger AI, Charles said, swirling his wine. Hot stuff. I tried to get in on the seed round, but I missed it. Whoever got in early is sitting on a lottery ticket. Preston laughed. AI for accountants? Sounds boring. I'm sure it's hype, Charles. Charles looked at Preston with pity. It's the future, Preston. You really should pay more attention to the market. I took a sip of my water to hide my smile. I wanted to scream, I got in early, Charles. Me? The housewife in the cheap dress. But I stayed silent. The secret was delicious. It was power. Every time Preston belittled me, every time he denied me money for a haircut or a dress, I mentally checked my portfolio. He thought he was the king of the castle. He didn't know the queen was building a fortress of her own, brick by digital brick. By the time we hit our 4th anniversary, my life had completely split into two parallel realities. In reality A, I was Mrs. Preston Shannon, the dutiful, slightly boring wife. I nodded when Preston lectured me about politics. I kept the house spotless. I wore the conservative clothes he liked. I accepted my allowance for groceries and thanked him for it. In reality B, I was Meredith, a strategic consultant and savvy investor. My business, Bluegrass Solutions, had grown to 30 clients. I had hired a remote assistant, a sweet girl from Ohio, to handle the administrative emails so I could focus on strategy. Ledger AI was preparing for a Series B funding round that would value my initial stake at over $500,000. It was exhausting, living this double life. I had to be meticulous. I had a burner phone for client calls that I kept hidden in a hollowed-out book in the library. I scheduled my spa days and visits to Mom to coincide with board meetings and client reviews. One Tuesday, I told Preston I was getting a facial and lunch with a friend. Have fun, he muttered, not looking up from his iPad. Don't spend too much. The credit card bill was high last month. I won't, I promised. I drove to a co-working space downtown, changed from my housewife beige into a sharp navy blazer I kept in my trunk, and logged into a Zoom meeting with the board of directors for a regional trucking company I was consulting for. Meredith, your analysis on the fuel hedging strategy saved us 6% this quarter, the CEO told me. We're authorizing a performance bonus of $10,000. Thank you, Jim, I said professionally. Let's look at the Q3 projections. I felt alive. I felt respected. People listened to me because I was smart, not because of who I married. I changed back into my casual clothes, drove home, and had dinner ready by the time Preston walked in. How was your day? I asked, serving him roast chicken. Stressful, he sighed. The partners are writing me about billable hours. But, he puffed out his chest, I did get a quarterly bonus. $3,000. He looked at me, expecting applause. That's wonderful, honey. I said, feigning excitement. You work so hard. I do, he agreed, taking a bite. I was thinking I'd use it to upgrade the sound system in the media room. You don't mind, do you? He didn't ask if I needed anything. He didn't suggest a vacation for us. It was for him. Always for him. Of course not, I said. You deserve it. Inside, I was laughing. $3,000? That's cute, Preston. I made $10,000 between lunch and my facial. But the satisfaction was starting to sour. The gap between who I was and who he thought I was had become a canyon. I looked at him across the table, a man who claimed to love me but didn't know me at all. He loved the idea of me. He loved the convenience of me. If I told him right now that I had a net worth approaching $1 million, what would he do? Would he be proud? No. He would be threatened. He would try to take control of it. He would say, let me manage that for you, Meredith. You don't understand the markets. I realized then that I couldn't stay forever. The success wasn't fixing my marriage, it was illuminating how broken it was. And Preston? He was getting worse. The late nights were becoming more frequent. He started guarding his phone like it was the nuclear launch codes. He was irritable, picking fights over nothing. Why is this fork dirty? He snapped one night, throwing it on the table. It's not dirty, Preston. It's a water spot. It's incompetence, he shouted. I work 12 hours a day to pay for this house, and you can't even load a dishwasher properly? I picked up the fork. I looked at my reflection in the metal. I looked tired, but my eyes were clear. I'll get you another one, I said calmly. I walked into the kitchen. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from my investment app. Ledger AI had just been acquired by a major financial conglomerate. My shares were about to become liquid. I leaned against the counter, clutching the clean fork. I wasn't just a housewife with a side hustle anymore. I was about to be a very, very wealthy woman. And Preston was shouting from the dining room about a water spot. The tide was turning. But I didn't know that while I was counting my millions, Preston was counting on something else entirely, a way to replace me. The betrayal was coming, and it was going to hurt more than I ever imagined. But this time, I had a shield made of gold. Thank you for listening to my story so far. It's hard to relive those moments of feeling so small, but knowing where I ended up makes it worth it. If you're enjoying this journey, please hit that like button and comment number 1 below. It tells me you're with me, and it really helps the channel. I'll see you in the next part. The funny thing about intuition is that it usually whispers before it screams. For me, the scream started with a scent. It was a Wednesday night. Preston had been coming home late for weeks, citing complex depositions or partner dinners. I had been so busy managing my double life, shuffling between being a housewife and a secret tech investor, that I hadn't paid enough attention to the shift in his behavior. I was relieved he was gone, to be honest. It gave me more time to work in the closet. But that Wednesday, he walked in at 11 p.m. I was sitting on the sofa, pretending to read a magazine, though I had just closed a laptop hidden under the cushions. He leaned down to give me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek. That's when I smelled it. It wasn't the crisp, expensive Chanel perfume that the wives in our social circle wore. It was sickly sweet. Vanilla and artificial coconut. It smelled like a teenage girl's body spray, the kind you buy at a drugstore for $5. You smell different, I said, pulling back slightly. Preston stiffened. He straightened his tie, not meeting my eyes. I stopped at a diner for coffee. The waitress probably spilled some syrup near me. I'm exhausted, Meredith. I'm going to shower. He walked away too fast. My stomach churned. A diner? Preston wouldn't be caught dead in a diner unless it was a Michelin-starred version of one. While he was in the shower, I did something I hadn't done in 6 years of marriage. I picked up his phone from the nightstand. I knew his passcode. It was his birthday, 0412. I typed it in. Incorrect passcode. Try again. My heart skipped a beat. He had changed it. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried his mother's birthday. Incorrect. The phone locked me out for 1 minute. I stared at the black screen, seeing my own reflection. I looked pale. It wasn't just the password. It was the secrecy. Preston used to hand me his phone to answer texts while he was driving. He used to leave it unlocked on the kitchen counter. Now, it was a fortress. When he came out of the bathroom, scrubbing his hair with a towel, he saw me looking at the phone. He lunged for it. "What are you doing?" he snapped, snatching it off the table. I was just going to check the time, I stammered, falling back into my role of the submissive wife. My watch stopped. "Use the clock on the wall," he muttered, shoving the phone into his pocket. "And stop hovering. You're suffocating me." The next morning, I went into detective mode. I didn't get mad. I got methodical. This was business now. If he was cheating, it wasn't just heartbreak, it was a liability. I waited until he left for work, then I went to the laundry hamper. I pulled out the shirt he had worn the night before. I examined it under the bright light of the window. There were no lipstick stains, nothing obvious. But then I checked his suit jacket pocket. He was usually careful, but arrogance makes people sloppy. Tucked deep in the inside pocket, crumpled into a tiny ball, was a receipt. I carefully smoothed it out on the ironing board. It wasn't from a fancy restaurant. It was from a Motel 6 on the outskirts of Nashville. Room 114. Cash payment. Check-in, 7:30 p.m. Check-out, 10:15 p.m. I stared at the paper. A Motel 6. Preston, the man who complained if the thread count on our sheets wasn't high enough, was taking someone to a $40 a night motel. It was almost funny. He was cheap. He was cheating on me, risking our marriage, risking his reputation, and he couldn't even spring for a Marriott? I took a photo of the receipt and uploaded it to my secure cloud storage. Then I put the receipt back exactly how I found it. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling a strange sense of calm. The love I had once felt for him, or the idea of him, evaporated in that moment. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. He wasn't just a controlling husband anymore. He was an adversary. And he had made the mistake of thinking I was stupid. "Okay, Preston," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to play games? Let's play." I knew I needed more than a receipt. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to know who she was. And I needed to know exactly what he thought of me, so when I destroyed him in court, I wouldn't feel a shred of guilt. The following Thursday, Preston called me at 4 p.m. "I have a client dinner tonight," he said, his voice smooth. "Don't wait up. It's going to be a long strategy session." "Okay, honey," I said, keeping my voice light. "Good luck with the client." I hung up and immediately went to my closet. I changed out of my house dress into black leggings, a dark hoodie, and a baseball cap. I looked like invisible suburban camouflage. I drove my old sedan, the one Preston refused to ride in because it was embarrassing, and parked down the street from his office building. I waited. At 6:15 p.m., Preston walked out. He wasn't alone. Walking next to him was a girl who couldn't have been older than 24. She had bleach blonde hair, a skirt that was professionally questionable, and she was hanging onto his arm like an accessory. I recognized her. It was Shelby, the new intern he had mentioned a few times. The one he said was eager to learn. Apparently, she was learning a lot more than tort law. They got into his BMW. I followed them. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I kept a 2-car distance, my heart pounding against my ribs. They didn't go to the Motel 6 this time. They went to Le Jardin, a very expensive, very intimate French restaurant downtown. The kind of place Preston took me for our anniversaries. I parked across the street. I watched them walk in. They didn't look like colleagues. He had his hand on the small of her back, sliding it lower than was appropriate. I waited 10 minutes, then I put on my oversized sunglasses and walked in. The hostess looked at my hoodie skeptically. "I'm meeting a party," I mumbled, keeping my head down. "I see them." I slipped past her and found a booth in the back, obscured by a large potted fern. Preston and Shelby were 2 tables away. They couldn't see me, but if I leaned back and focused, I could hear them. I pulled out my phone and hit record. For the first 20 minutes, it was nauseating. Shelby was giggling at everything he said. Preston was preening, puffing his chest out, talking about his court victories. "You're so powerful, Preston," Shelby cooed. "I don't know how you handle it all." "It takes a certain breed, babe," he said. "Most people crumble under pressure." Then, the conversation shifted to me. "Does your wife suspect anything?" Shelby asked, her voice dropping a little. Preston laughed. It was a dismissive, cruel sound. "Meredith? Please. She doesn't have the brain power to suspect anything. As long as the bills are paid and she has her little garden, she's happy." "She sounds boring," Shelby said. "Boring is an understatement," Preston replied. He took a sip of wine. "She's a country goose, Shelby. That's what she is. I picked her up out of the mud in Kentucky because my mother wanted me to settle down with someone safe and manageable. She was pretty enough, and she worshipped me. But God, talking to her is like talking to drywall. A country goose." The insult sliced through me sharper than a knife. He didn't just fall out of love with me, he despised me. He saw me as livestock. A dumb animal he had acquired to breed and keep in a pen. "So when are you going to leave her?" Shelby pressed. "Soon," Preston promised. "I just need to structure the assets right. I don't want to give her a dime more than I have to. She'd just waste it on, I don't know, quilting supplies or whatever hillbillies do. Once I secure the partnership bonus next quarter, I'll cut her loose. She'll be back in a trailer park within a year without me." Tears pricked my eyes, but they were hot tears of rage, not sorrow. Trailer park? Hillbilly? I looked at my phone. The recording timer was ticking. 2400 hours 15, 2400 hours 16. I had it. I had his voice, his confession, his cruelty, and his admission of hiding assets. Structure the assets. I stopped the recording and uploaded it instantly. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to flip their table over and scream. I wanted to pour their expensive Bordeaux all over Preston's custom suit. But I didn't. The strategist in me took over. A scene in a restaurant would act as a warning. It would give him time to prepare. I needed to be a sniper, not a brawler. I slipped out of the restaurant before they ordered dessert. I sat in my car, shaking. Country goose, I repeated to myself. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I wiped the single tear from my cheek. Okay, Preston, I said. This goose is about to cook you. The next morning, I didn't go to the grocery store. I drove to the glass and steel tower in downtown Nashville that housed the law firm of Torres and Associates. I had an appointment with Lorraine Torres. In Nashville legal circles, they called her the Barracuda. She was known for chewing up wealthy husbands and spitting them out in settlement agreements. She was expensive, intimidating, and exactly what I needed. I walked into her office wearing my best suit, one I kept hidden in my trunk. I placed my designer handbag on the chair. I needed her to see me not as a victim, but as a client who could pay. Lorraine was a woman in her 50s with sharp features and even sharper eyes. She looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Shannon, she said. I know your husband's firm. Why are you here? I want a divorce, I said clearly. And I want to destroy him. Lorraine raised an eyebrow. A small smile played on her lips. I like clarity. Tell me everything. I told her about the cheating, the recording, the hidden assets. But then I hesitated. I had to reveal my secret. There's something else, I said. Preston thinks I'm broke. He thinks I'm a dependent housewife. But I'm not. I pulled out a folder. Inside was the balance sheet for Bluegrass Solutions and my investment portfolio. At that time, before the big IPO, I was worth about $3 million. Lorraine flipped through the pages. Her eyes widened. She looked from the papers to me, then back to the papers. You made this? During the marriage? Yes. Secretly. Lorraine leaned back, tapping a pen against her chin. This complicates things, Meredith. Tennessee is an equitable distribution state. Usually, any income earned during the marriage is marital property. If Preston finds out about this, he's entitled to half. Maybe more, since he was the primary earner for the household expenses. My heart sank. So, I did all this for nothing? He gets to cheat on me and then take half of my hard work? Usually, yes, Lorraine said. Unless. She pulled out a copy of the prenuptial agreement that Preston had forced me to sign 6 years ago. I remembered that day. I was so in love, so trusting. I had signed it without even reading it, just to prove I wasn't after his money. Preston's father drafted this, Lorraine said, flipping through the dense legal jargon. He wanted to protect the Shannon family wealth from you. It's incredibly restrictive. It waives your right to alimony. It waives your claim on his inheritance. It waives your claim on his premarital property. I know, I said bitterly. It screwed me. Wait, Lorraine's finger stopped on page 12. She squinted. Then she laughed. It was a dry, delighted sound. Oh, the arrogance of men. What? Look at clause 15, she pointed. I read the legal text. Any business entity, corporation, or investment vehicle established by either party during the course of the marriage, created solely by the individual effort of that party, and without the direct financial contribution or active participation of the other spouse, shall remain the separate property of the originating spouse. I looked up at her, confused. They put this in to protect Preston, Lorraine explained, her eyes gleaming. They assumed he would be the one starting businesses and investing. They wanted to make sure that if he started a venture capital firm or bought a new practice, you couldn't touch it. They phrased it to exclude you from his future success. But the language is gender neutral, Meredith, Lorraine grinned, looking like a shark that just smelled blood. It applies to you too. You started Bluegrass Solutions without his money? Yes. I used my own savings. Did he contribute labor? Advice? He told me it was a waste of time. He called it a hobby. Perfect, Lorraine slammed the folder shut. We have the recording of him disparaging your business. We have the proof he didn't contribute a dime. Under his own daddy's ironclad prenup, your millions are yours. And because he's cheating and hiding assets, we can go after his millions too. I felt a weight lift off my chest so heavy I almost floated. The trap they had built for me had become my fortress. So what do we do? I asked. We wait, Lorraine said. We let him file. We let him think you're destitute. We let him offer you pennies. Let him commit perjury on his financial disclosure forms. And then, she made a crushing motion with her hand. We dropped the hammer. I left her office feeling invincible. I walked out into the sunlight of Nashville, and for the first time in years, the city looked bright. I wasn't a country goose. I was a wolf in goose's clothing. And hunting season had just begun. The euphoria of my meeting with Lorraine didn't last long. I had to go back to the house. I had to go back to playing the role. But it's hard to play dumb when you know you hold the winning hand. I must have slipped up. Maybe I was a little too confident when I answered him. Maybe I didn't look down quickly enough when he criticized dinner. A week after meeting Lorraine, disaster struck. I had been using an old iPad in the kitchen to look up recipes. I thought I had cleared the browser history. But I had forgotten one tab. Tennessee divorce laws, asset division, adultery. I was in the garden when I heard Preston screaming my name. It wasn't his usual annoyed tone. It was a roar. I ran inside. He was standing in the kitchen, the iPad in his hand. His face was a color I had never seen, a deep, mottled purple. A vein was throbbing in his forehead. What is this? He hissed, shaking the tablet at me. I was just curious, I stammered, backing away until my back hit the refrigerator. After what you said about money, I just wanted to know my rights. He threw the iPad onto the granite counter. It shattered. He stepped closer, invading my space. He loomed over me, smelling of aggression and scotch. This was the first time I felt physically unsafe. Rights? He laughed, but his eyes were dead. You have no rights, Meredith. You are a guest in my house. You are a passenger in my life. Preston, please. You thinking of leaving me? He sneered. You thinking of trying to take half of what I earned? Is that it? You're plotting? I'm not plotting. Let me make something very clear to you, he lowered his voice to a terrifying whisper. If you try to divorce me, if you try to drag my name through the mud, I will ruin you. You can't. I can and I will, he interrupted. I'm a lawyer, Meredith. I know judges. I know the system. I will drag the case out until you can't afford a loaf of bread. I will bury you in legal fees. I will make sure you end up on the street. He paused, then smiled cruelly. And your mother? That sweet little lady working at the bank in Kentucky? I know people on the board there. It would be a shame if she lost her pension because of an audit error, wouldn't it? My blood ran cold. He was threatening my mother. He was threatening the only person in the world who truly loved me. Leave my mother out of this, I whispered, my voice shaking. Then know your place, he shouted, slamming his hand against the cabinets. You stay until I say you can go. You take what I give you. And you keep your mouth shut. He stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me trembling against the cold steel of the fridge. I slid down to the floor. I hugged my knees. I wanted to cry, but the fear was quickly replaced by something else. Adrenaline. Survival instinct. He had crossed a line. He had threatened my family. I realized then that Lorraine was right. I couldn't just divorce him. I had to destroy him. I had to strip him of his power, his money, and his reputation so thoroughly that he could never hurt anyone again. I waited until I heard his car leave. Then, I ran to the closet. I packed up my laptop, my hard drives, and my important papers. I couldn't keep them in the house anymore. It wasn't safe. I drove to a 24-hour storage facility and rented a locker. I put everything there. My digital empire. My future. When I drove back to the house, I felt naked without my equipment, but I knew I had to endure just a little longer. You think you're the hunter, Preston, I thought as I pulled into the driveway of the house that felt like a prison. But you just cornered a wild animal. And you forgot that animal's bite. The next few weeks were a nightmare of walking on eggshells. I played the terrified wife perfectly because I was terrified. But every insult he hurled at me, every threat he whispered, I catalogued it. I was building a mental dossier. And then, the universe decided to speed up the timeline. The final explosion was coming, and it was going to happen right in our bedroom. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks after the iPad incident. I wasn't supposed to be home. I had told Preston I was driving to Kentucky to visit my mom for a few days to cool off. But I hadn't gone. I had stayed at a hotel in town to meet with the investors for the Ledger AI acquisition. The meeting ended early, and I needed to stop by the house to grab my passport, which I had forgotten in the safe. I pulled into the driveway at 2 p.m. Preston's car was there. That was odd. He never came home for lunch. And there was another car, a red Mercedes convertible. Shelby's car. I knew what I was walking into. My heart didn't race, it just stopped. I walked to the front door, unlocked it quietly, and stepped inside. The house was silent, except for the sound of music coming from upstairs. Jazz. The same playlist he used to play for me. I walked up the stairs. My legs felt heavy, like I was moving through water. I reached the master bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. There they were. In my bed. The bed we had picked out together. The bed where I had cried myself to sleep countless nights. Preston and Shelby. They were tangled in the sheets, laughing. They weren't just sleeping together, they were celebrating. There was a bottle of champagne on the nightstand. I stood there for a moment, just watching. It was grotesque. It was the ultimate disrespect. Preston, I said. My voice was calm, almost conversational. They scrambled apart. Shelby shrieked and pulled the sheet up to her neck. Preston jumped out of bed, grabbing his boxers. Meredith, he yelled, his face cycling through shock, guilt, and then settling on rage. You're supposed to be in Kentucky. Clearly, I said, leaning against the doorframe. I should have called. I hate to interrupt a party. Get out! Shelby yelled. The audacity. This girl was in my bed, yelling at me to get out. Shut up, Shelby, I said, not even looking at her. I kept my eyes on Preston. So this is working late? Preston didn't apologize. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He straightened up, putting on his pants with an air of defiance. Well, this saves me a conversation, he spat. I'm done, Meredith. I'm sick of sneaking around. I want a divorce. Shelby and I are together. Together? I laughed dryly. She's an intern, Preston. She's a child. She appreciates me, he shouted. She's ambitious. She's not a dead weight like you. We're planning a future. A real power couple. Power couple, I repeated, shaking my head. Right. I want you out, Preston said, pointing to the door. Now. Today. This is my house. I paid for it. It's marital property, I reminded him. I have a right to stay. I don't care. He stepped closer, his face menacing. If you stay, I'll make your life a living hell. I'll change the locks. I'll cut off the credit cards. I'll have security drag you out. I looked at him. I looked at the pathetic scene, the messy bed, the cheap girl, the weak man acting tough. I realized I didn't want to fight for this house. It was tainted. It smelled of them. Fine, I said. I'll go. Preston looked surprised. He expected a fight. He expected me to cry and cling to the furniture. Good, he huffed. Take your clothes. Leave the jewelry. I bought that. I'll take what is mine, I said. I went to the closet. I grabbed 2 suitcases. I packed my housewife clothes, the beige sweaters, the modest dresses. I didn't touch the jewelry he gave me. I left my wedding ring on the dresser. You're making a big mistake, Preston sneered as I walked past him with my bags. You'll be crawling back in a week when you run out of money. You won't last a day in the real world. Shelby was watching from the bed, a smug grin on her face. Bye, Meredith, she chirped. Don't forget to write. I stopped at the door. I looked at them one last time. I wanted to remember this picture. I wanted to burn it into my memory so that when the judge read out my millions, I could recall exactly how low they went. Enjoy the house, Preston, I said. I hope the roof doesn't leak on your power couple dreams. I walked out the front door. I put my bags in my car. As I drove away from the Belmead estate, I didn't turn back. I didn't drive to a motel. I didn't drive to Kentucky. I drove downtown, to a luxury high-rise building called the Pinnacle. I pulled into the private underground garage. I took the elevator to the top floor. I used a keycard to open the door to Unit 401. The penthouse. I had bought it 3 months ago through a shell company. It was fully furnished with modern art, white leather sofas, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Nashville skyline. I walked in. It smelled of fresh lilies and expensive leather. It was mine. Paid for in cash. I walked to the window and looked down at the city lights. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Preston. I canceled the credit cards. Good luck eating tonight. I laughed. I walked to the wine fridge, pulled out a bottle of Dom Perignon that I had saved for a special occasion, and popped the cork. Cheers, Preston, I toasted the empty, beautiful room. You have no idea who you just messed with. Living in the penthouse felt like living on a different planet. For the first time in years, I woke up without a knot of anxiety in my stomach. No criticism, no walking on eggshells. Just the quiet hum of the city below and the soft Egyptian cotton sheets I had bought for myself. But while I was enjoying my freedom, Preston and his mother were busy trying to destroy me socially. I found out through Brenda. We met for coffee a week after I moved out. It's bad, Mary, Brenda said, grimacing as she stirred her latte. Eleanor is telling everyone at the club that you had a mental breakdown. She says you were paranoid, hearing voices, and that you ran off with a truck driver. A truck driver? I couldn't help but laugh. Creative. It gets worse, Brenda warned. Preston is telling people you cheated. He says he found texts. He's painting himself as the heartbroken husband who tried everything to save you from your demons. He's projecting, I said, sipping my tea. It's classic narcissism. Accuse the other person of exactly what you are doing. Well, it's working, Brenda sighed. I ran into Cynthia from the Charity League. She literally turned her back on me when I mentioned your name. You've been blacklisted, hon. It hurt. I won't lie. These were women I had spent years trying to befriend. I had hosted their baby showers, donated to their causes. And they dropped me the second a man told them to. Let them talk, I said, straightening my spine. I don't need them. I have a new circle now. And I did. My business world was expanding. I wasn't just Meredith the housewife anymore. I was Meredith Shannon, angel investor. I attended board meetings for the startups I funded. I was respected for my mind, not my husband's last name. One evening, I was standing on my balcony, looking out at the glittering lights of Nashville. I held a glass of Pinot Noir that cost more than Preston's weekly grocery allowance for me. My phone rang. It was Eleanor. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. Hello, Eleanor. Meredith, her voice was ice cold. I heard you're staying in some apartment downtown. I assume you're burning through whatever cash you stole from my son. I didn't steal anything, Eleanor. Don't lie to me. Preston told me everything. You're a disgrace. After everything we gave you. The clothes, the house, the status. You were a nobody, and you're going back to being a nobody. Is there a reason for this call? I asked, bored. I'm calling to tell you to accept the settlement, she hissed. Preston is offering you $50,000. That is generous. Take it and disappear. If you fight him, we will crush you. The Shannon family has friends in every courtroom in this state. Not every courtroom, I thought, remembering Judge Holloway's reputation for fairness. Thank you for the advice, Eleanor, I said cheerfully. But I think I'll let the lawyers handle it. You ungrateful little. I hung up. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. Below me, the city was alive. Somewhere out there, Preston was probably in that big, cold house with Shelby, thinking he had one. He thought I was crying in a motel room. He didn't know I was standing on top of the world. The smear campaign only fueled my fire. They wanted to paint me as unstable? Fine. I would show them just how stable and powerful I really was. I went back inside and opened my laptop. I had an email from the CEO of Ledger AI. The subject line was, "It's official." I clicked it open. The email was short, but it changed everything. Meredith, the acquisition is closed. Global Bank has acquired Ledger AI for $300 million. As a Series A investor holding 4% equity, post-dilution, your payout has been processed. I stared at the screen. I knew the math. I had done the projections 100 times. But seeing it in black and white was different. I logged into my business bank account. The page took a second to load. That spinning wheel felt like it lasted a lifetime. Then, the numbers appeared. Current balance, $12,450,000. I didn't scream. I didn't jump up and down. I just froze. $12 million. It was a number so big it didn't feel real. It was generational wealth. It was forget your name money. It was buy the house Preston lives in and evict him money. Tears started to stream down my face. Not happy tears, not sad tears. Just release. I thought about the times Preston made me beg for money to buy groceries. I thought about him throwing my book on the floor. I thought about the country goose comment. I thought about my mom, counting coupons at the kitchen table. I did it, Mom, I whispered to the empty room. I broke the cycle. I called Brenda. It was 11 p.m., but she answered on the first ring. What's wrong? She asked, hearing my heavy breathing. Brenda, I choked out. The ledger deal closed. And? 12.4. Silence on the other line. Then, a shriek so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Oh my God! Meredith! You are a multimillionaire. You are richer than him. You are richer than his whole nasty family. I am, I said, a smile finally breaking through the tears. I really am. What are you going to do? Brenda asked. Are you going to buy a yacht? A private island? No, I said, looking at the city lights. I'm going to buy my freedom. And then, I'm going to buy justice. The next morning, I transferred $2 million into a conservative bond portfolio for my mother. I set it up so she would receive a monthly payout that was double her salary at the bank. She would never have to work another day in her life. Then, I called Lorraine. The money is in, I told her. Excellent, Lorraine purred. Now, we set the trap. Preston's lawyer sent over the financial disclosure forms yesterday. Have you seen them? No. I'll email them to you. It's exactly what we hoped for. He's lying, Meredith. He's lying about everything. I opened the document. Preston had declared his assets. Savings, $40,000 checking, $12,000 retirement, $300,000 real estate, marital home, mortgaged, other assets, none. I laughed out loud. None? He didn't declare his partnership bonus, I told Lorraine. Or the offshore account in the Caymans he mentioned in the recording. Or his crypto wallet. That's perjury, Lorraine said, sounding delightful. He is signing a legal document under oath stating this is the truth. When we prove he lied, the judge will have the discretion to award you a larger share of the actual marital assets. And because of Clause 15, your $12 million is untouchable. He's going to offer me a settlement, isn't he? Yes. A lowball offer. He wants you to sign quickly before you realize how broke you are. Let him offer, I said. I want to see the look on his face when he realizes I can buy his law firm. I felt a surge of power I had never known. For years, money had been the weapon used against me. Now, I was holding the bazooka. The settlement meeting was held at David's office, Preston's lawyer. They wanted to intimidate me. The conference room was all mahogany and leather, smelling of intimidation fees. I walked in with Lorraine. I wore a simple gray dress. I looked modest. Defeated, even. I wanted them to think I was tired. Preston was there, sitting at the head of the table like a king. He didn't look at me. He was typing on his phone, probably texting Shelby. David pushed a document toward me. Meredith, David said in a condescending tone usually reserved for toddlers. Preston is being very generous here. He is offering a lump sum of $50,000. This will help you get set up, somewhere affordable. Maybe an apartment in East Nashville? He sneered the location. In exchange, David continued, you waive all claims to the house, the retirement accounts, and future alimony. It's a clean break. I looked at the paper. $50,000. It was an insult. It was less than what he spent on his car lease in a year. And this is based on his financial disclosure? Lorraine asked, tapping the document where Preston had lied about his assets. Yes, Preston spoke up, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold. I don't have liquid cash, Meredith. The market has been tough. This 50 grand is coming out of my personal savings. I'm doing you a favor. Liar. I knew for a fact he had just closed $1 million case. And you swear this is a complete list of your assets? Lorraine asked, locking eyes with him. Nothing hidden? No offshore accounts? No bonuses? Preston didn't blink. I swear. It's all there. Sign the paper, Meredith. Stop wasting my money on legal fees. Lorraine looked at me. This was the moment. If I signed this, it was over. But we weren't going to sign. We were just getting him on the record. We need a few days to review, Lorraine said, standing up. You don't have a few days. Preston snapped. The offer expires in 48 hours. After that, I take it off the table and you get nothing. We'll see you in court, Preston, I said softly. Suit yourself, he laughed. Don't come crying to me when the judge gives you 0. You're going to lose, Meredith. You always lose. As we walked to the elevator, Lorraine squeezed my arm. We got him. He's on record. He lied to us, and he'll lie to the judge. That's perjury. He looked so confident, I whispered. That's because he thinks he's playing poker with a toddler, Lorraine grinned. He doesn't know you're holding a royal flush. That night, I went back to the penthouse. I packed a bag for court the next day. I laid out my outfit. I wasn't going to wear the gray dress. I wasn't going to wear the beige cardigan. I opened a garment bag. Inside was a navy blue Armani suit I had bought in New York during a business trip. It was sharp, tailored, and screamed CEO. Next to it, I placed a velvet box. Inside was a diamond solitaire necklace, a gift from Brenda and Patricia to celebrate the lingerie ideal. They called it the Freedom Diamond. I looked at myself in the mirror. The scared girl from Kentucky was gone. The submissive wife was dead. Tomorrow, Preston Shannon was going to meet Meredith the multimillionaire. And he wasn't going to like her one bit. The morning of the court hearing was crisp and bright. Nashville's sky was a piercing blue, perfect for a day of reckoning. I woke up at 5 a.m. I didn't need an alarm. My body was humming with adrenaline. I drank my coffee standing by the window of the penthouse, watching the city wake up. I showered and began my transformation. I applied my makeup differently, sharper contour, a bolder lip. I pulled my hair back into a sleek, low bun. No loose strands. No softness. I put on the Armani suit. It fit like armor. The fabric was cool and expensive against my skin. I fastened the Freedom Diamond around my neck. It caught the light, sparkling like a captured star. I put on my heels, 4-inch stilettos that clicked authoritatively on the floor. I grabbed my leather briefcase. Inside wasn't a knitting project or a grocery list. It was the financial dossier that would end Preston's reign of terror. I drove my new car to the courthouse. I had traded the old sedan for a sleek black Porsche Cayenne 2 days ago. I parked it in the public lot, right next to Preston's BMW. The contrast was poetic. I walked toward the courthouse steps. Lorraine was waiting for me. She was wearing a burgundy suit that looked like the color of dried blood. Appropriate. She saw me and stopped. Her jaw dropped slightly. Wow, she said. You look expensive. I feel expensive, I replied, adjusting my sunglasses. Ready? More than ready. We walked into the courthouse. The hallway was crowded. I saw Preston and David standing near the water fountain. Shelby was there too, sitting on a bench, looking nervous. When Preston saw me, he did a double take. He didn't recognize me for a split second. Then, his eyes narrowed. He looked at the suit. He looked at the shoes. He looked at the bag. He leaned over to David and whispered something. They both laughed. I knew what they were thinking. She spent the settlement money before she even got it. She rented a suit to look tough. Pathetic. He walked over to me, swaggering. Nice costume, Meredith, he sneered. Who are you supposed to be? A working woman? Did you rent that bag? Good morning, Preston, I said coolly. You have lint on your lapel. He brushed it off automatically, frowning. Don't get comfortable. This will be over in an hour. Judge Holloway doesn't have patience for gold diggers. I agree, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. She hates dishonesty too. Save the speeches, he spat. Just remember, when you're walking back to your car crying, I warned you. He turned and walked into the courtroom, Shelby trailing behind him like a puppy. I took a deep breath. Lorraine nodded at me. Let's go execute him, she whispered. We pushed open the heavy oak doors. The smell of old wood and justice hit me. This was the arena. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the prey. I was the gladiator. Judge Holloway's courtroom was intimidating. High ceilings, portraits of stern old men on the walls, and the heavy silence of the law. We took our seats. Preston and David were on the right. Lorraine and I were on the left. Shelby sat in the gallery directly behind Preston, chewing her lip. Eleanor was there too, sitting in the back row, glaring at me with pure hatred. The bailiff called out, "All rise." Judge Holloway entered. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and looked at us. We are here for the final decree of divorce in the matter of Shannon versus Shannon, she said. I understand there is a dispute regarding the division of assets. Yes, Your Honor, David stood up, buttoning his jacket. Mr. Shannon has made a generous offer to Mrs. Shannon, despite her complete lack of financial contribution to the marriage. We believe she is contesting simply to harass my client. Harass? Lorraine stood up slowly. Your Honor, we are contesting because Mr. Shannon has committed perjury on his financial disclosure. Preston stiffened. David waved a hand dismissively. Baseless accusations. The proceedings began. Preston took the stand. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. I tried, Your Honor, he said, looking at the judge with soulful, sad eyes. I worked 80-hour weeks to provide a lifestyle for Meredith. She refused to work. She spent her days shopping and lounging. I tried to encourage her, but she just didn't have the drive. And the infidelity? The judge asked. A moment of weakness, Preston sighed, looking at his hands. I was lonely. My wife had emotionally abandoned me. I found comfort in someone who understood my pressure. I dug my nails into my palm to stop myself from laughing. Emotionally abandoned him? I cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, and listened to his ego trips for 6 years. And your assets? The judge asked. You claim you have no other savings? That is correct, Your Honor, Preston said firmly. The market has been hard. I have significant debt. Liar, I mouthed silently. Then it was David's turn to attack me. Your Honor, David said, pacing the floor. Mrs. Shannon is a woman of simple tastes. She has no career. No prospects. Mr. Shannon is willing to give her $50,000. That is more than enough for her to return to her hometown and start over. We ask the court to enforce the prenuptial agreement which protects Mr. Shannon's family wealth. Ah, yes, Judge Holloway nodded. The prenuptial agreement. I have reviewed it. It is standard, Your Honor, David smiled smugly. It keeps separate property separate. Indeed it does, the judge said. She looked at me. Mrs. Shannon, your counsel indicates you have submitted a separate financial disclosure this morning. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. David rolled his eyes. What could she possibly have to disclose? Her coupon collection? Shelby giggled in the back. Even Eleanor let out a scoff. Mr. Harrison, the judge snapped at David. Show some respect. She picked up the sealed envelope Lorraine had handed the clerk earlier. I will now review Mrs. Shannon's assets, Judge Holloway said. She opened the envelope. The room went silent. I watched Preston. He was leaning back in his chair, looking at his watch, completely unbothered. He thought this was a joke. He thought I was declaring a few $100s from a lemonade stand. Judge Holloway pulled out the document. She adjusted her glasses. She read the first line. Her eyebrows shot up. She stopped. She looked at the paper again, then looked at me. She looked at Preston. A strange look. Almost pity. Mr. Shannon, the judge said, her voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. Are you aware of your wife's business activities? She has no business activities, Your Honor, Preston laughed. Unless you count spending my money. I see, the judge said. Then you will be very surprised by this summary. She cleared her throat. Asset 1. Here it comes. The bomb. The air conditioner hummed, but the room felt suddenly hot. Asset number 1, Judge Holloway read clearly. Meredith Finance Solutions, LLC. Founded 3 years ago. Sole owner, Meredith Shannon. Current valuation, $2.1 million. Preston froze. His smile didn't just fade, it fell off his face like a mask shattering. He blinked, looking at his lawyer. David frowned, rifling through his papers. Asset number 2, the judge continued, her voice gaining strength. Real estate. Penthouse Unit 401, The Pinnacle. Purchased cash. Value, $1.5 million. A gasp from the gallery. It was Eleanor. She had a hand to her throat, looking like she was witnessing a murder. Preston turned to look at me. His eyes were wide, confused, terrified. Penthouse? And asset number 3, the judge looked directly at Preston. Investment portfolio, consisting primarily of post-acquisition equity in Global Bank via Ledger AI. Cash balance, $12.4 million. What? Preston screamed. He actually screamed. He stood up, knocking his chair back. That's impossible. She's a housewife. She's broke. Sit down, Mr. Shannon, the judge banged her gavel. It's a mistake. Preston pointed at me, his fingers shaking violently. She doesn't have $12 million. She buys clothes at Target. It is verified, Mr. Shannon, the judge said coldly. Certified bank statements. Total disclosed assets, the judge concluded. $16 million. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. Preston slumped back into his chair. His face went from red to a sickly shade of gray. He looked like he was going to vomit. Shelby, behind him, was staring at the back of his head with wide, horrified eyes. She realized in that second that she had stolen the wrong person. She had stolen the pauper and left the prince. David, the shark lawyer, recovered first. He stood up, his eyes greedy. Your Honor, he shouted. If this is true, this is marital property. Mrs. Shannon acquired this during the marriage. My client is entitled to 50%. That's $8 million. Preston's head snapped up. Hope returned to his eyes. Yes. Yes. It's community property. I supported her while she did this. It's half mine. Lorraine stood up. She didn't shout. She was calm. Your Honor, I refer you to Clause 15 of the prenuptial agreement drafted by Mr. Shannon's father. David froze. He knew the clause. Read it, Counselor, the judge ordered. Lorraine picked up the document. Any business entity or investment established by a spouse without the direct financial contribution or active participation of the other spouse shall remain separate property. He didn't contribute. David argued. He paid the mortgage. He fed her. Financial contribution to the business, Lorraine corrected. And as for support. She pulled out a USB drive. We have evidence submitted as Exhibit B. A recording of Mr. Shannon referring to his wife's ambitions as a waste of time and a hobby. And calling her a country goose who wasn't capable of business. I watched Preston. He remembered the conversation. He remembered the French restaurant. He realized I had been there. He not only failed to contribute, Lorraine said, driving the nail in. He actively disparaged the business. Under the terms of his own contract, he gets nothing. Judge Holloway nodded slowly. The clause is ironclad. Mr. Shannon, your father wrote a very good contract. Unfortunately for you, it works both ways. No. Preston whispered. No. Furthermore, the judge continued, her eyes narrowing. Mr. Shannon, you failed to disclose your partnership bonus and your Cayman account, proofs of which were provided by Mrs. Shannon's counsel. That is perjury. Preston put his head in his hands. Because of your dishonesty, the judge ruled. I am awarding Mrs. Shannon 80% of the marital assets, including the Belmead house. You will vacate the property within 30 days. You can't take my house. Preston wailed. It's my family home. It was, the judge said. Now it belongs to the woman you underestimated. I looked at Preston. He was broken. He was a shell. The arrogant man who laughed while signing divorce papers was gone, replaced by a whimpering child who had lost his toy. Right at that moment, seeing his face drain of color, seeing his hands shake so hard he knocked his water glass onto the floor with a loud crash, I felt a jolt of electricity down my spine. It was the purest feeling I had ever known. It was victory. If you are still listening to this, please, do me a favor. Hit that like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me know that you are amazing, and that you are standing with me in this journey. Your support is the fuel that keeps me going. Comment 1 so I can see you, and now, listen to how I finished him off. The sound of the gavel hitting the wood was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. Bam. Done. Court is adjourned, Judge Holloway said. She gave me a small, imperceptible nod before sweeping out of the room. The aftermath was chaotic. David was frantically shoving papers into his briefcase, refusing to look at Preston. He knew he had lost the biggest case of his career to a country goose. Eleanor was being fanned by a bailiff in the back row. She looked like she had swallowed a lemon. The thought of me, the girl from Kentucky, owning her son's ancestral home was probably causing her physical pain. And Shelby? I watched Shelby stand up. She looked at Preston, who was still slumped at the table, muttering to himself. You said you had money, Shelby hissed, loud enough for me to hear. You said she was broke. Shelby, baby, wait. Preston reached for her hand. She snatched it away. You're losing the house? You're losing everything? I'm not living in a rental with you, Preston. I didn't sign up for this. She turned on her heel and marched out of the courtroom, her heels clacking angrily. Preston watched her go. Then he slowly turned to me. I was standing with Lorraine, packing up my briefcase. He walked over. He looked aged. 10 years older than he was an hour ago. Meredith, he croaked. Mr. Shannon, I corrected him. You planned this, he said, shaking his head. All this time. You were playing me. I wasn't playing, Preston, I said calmly. I was working. While you were cheating, I was building. While you were sleeping, I was learning. That's the difference between us. Meredith, please, his voice cracked. He reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back. We can fix this. $16 million? Think of what we could do. We were a team. I made you who you are. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. You didn't make me, Preston. You motivated me. I should thank you. If you hadn't been such a terrible husband, I might have settled for being just a wife. Your cruelty was my fuel. I love you, he whispered, desperate now. I made a mistake. Shelby meant nothing. I know she meant nothing, I said. Just like I meant nothing to you until you saw my bank balance. Let's go, Meredith, Lorraine said, guiding me toward the door. We walked out into the hallway. Preston followed us, stumbling a little. Wait! The house! Where am I supposed to live? He shouted after me. I stopped and turned around one last time. I hear the Motel 6 has vacancies, I smiled. Or maybe you can move back in with your mother. I'm sure Eleanor would love the company. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright sunlight. The air tasted sweeter. The colors looked brighter. I walked to my Porsche. Preston came running out the doors, David trying to hold him back. Meredith, he screamed from the top of the stairs. You're a country goose. You'll always be a country goose. I lowered my sunglasses. I rolled down the window of my car. You're right, Preston. I called back. But this goose just laid a golden egg. And you don't get a single piece of the shell. I revved the engine and drove away. I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw him standing there, small and defeated, a man who had everything and lost it because he couldn't appreciate what was right in front of him. Today, life is different. I sold the Belmead house, I didn't want the memories. I bought a beautiful modern home in the hills for my mom, and she lives with me now. We travel. We laugh. We eat dinner without anyone criticizing the fork placement. I still run Meredith Finance Solutions, but now I focus on a special mission. I help women. I set up a foundation that provides grants and financial education to women trapped in controlling marriages. I teach them how to open secret accounts, how to start businesses, how to build their own wings. Because Brenda was right. Money is freedom. And self-worth? That's something no man can give you, and no man can take away. So, if you are sitting there right now, feeling small, feeling trapped, feeling like someone's project, listen to me. You are stronger than you think. You are smarter than they know. Start small. Save $1. Read a book. Plan your escape. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you are just a goose. You might just be a dragon in disguise. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay strong, stay smart, and remember, the best revenge isn't anger. It's success. Meredith's story reminds us that true strength often emerges in our darkest moments. What appears to be a tale of revenge is actually a profound journey of self-discovery and empowerment. In a world where financial independence equals freedom, Meredith didn't just build wealth, she reclaimed her identity. Her transformation from a silenced housewife to a confident businesswoman illustrates how resilience can turn adversity into opportunity. The real victory wasn't the courtroom revelation, but the moment she recognized her own worth beyond someone else's validation. This narrative challenges us to examine the power dynamics in our own relationships. Are we defining ourselves through others' expectations, or are we nurturing our authentic talents? Meredith's journey teaches us that education and financial literacy aren't just practical skills, they're pathways to liberation. Her decision to help other women escape controlling situations transforms personal triumph into collective empowerment, creating ripples of change far beyond her own story. We all have hidden potential waiting to be unleashed. Perhaps there's a dream you've shelved, a talent you've downplayed, or a voice you've silenced. What would happen if you invested in yourself with the same determination as Meredith? If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of self-worth and resilience, comment good below. Your journey matters, and your wings are waiting to be spread.